Yes, we are. Greetings, everyone. My name is Dee. Welcome to the channel for Catalyst Energies. Thank you for joining me here. I'm so grateful that you're here. This is your weekend energy report for the weekend of Easter. So we are looking at April 11th and 12th of 2020. And so we'll go over the astrology for the weekend, and I will share with you the intuitive reading that came through this morning. And I'll be posting the spread itself, like a photo of the spread itself, on Instagram and Facebook after I post this video, so you can go back and reflect if you need to on those images, because that's kind of the wonderful thing about symbolic work and archetypal work, is that when you understand the language of these symbols and these archetypes, you can go back and use them as a tool in order to gain access to deeper aspects and deeper parts of your subconscious, because the answers you are looking for are always embedded within you. These are just tools to help your mind make the connections, to bring them out of the areas of your subconscious where they're not often being seen directly, unless you are constantly engaged in work that allows that to happen. And even if you are, you're still a human being, and you still have to process through everything that you are learning as a result of all of these symbols and archetypes coming into your life. So we'll look at the chart. I'll go over the reading, and hopefully this will give you a way to harness the energy of the weekend, because it is setting us up really for moving into the last quarter of the lunar cycle, which will happen on the 14th, which is Tuesday, April 14th. We have the third quarter square of the moon and the sun, and the moon will be in Capricorn at that point. And there's also going to be a sun square Pluto aspect that same day, and that is always really intense, and it's usually a moment of severe frustration when anything is squaring Pluto, because Pluto has its own trajectory, it has its own plan, and is usually excavating things that we don't necessarily want to look at, and sometimes that throws our whole plan off course. But I think you'll see in the reading that I share later that we can move past that and use that square as to transmute the energy that's frustrating. And that seems to be the theme of the weekend in and of itself, is, are we going to transmute, or are we going to stay locked into our dogma of belief? Because that's really what the Sagittarius archetype is all about. We are in a Sagittarius moon all day tomorrow, and then the moon will move into Capricorn pretty early in the morning, 5 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, so 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time for the US, and on Easter. So there'll be a lot of, and then there's some other things that are coming up on Easter that are going to be really eye-opening and challenging, as far as I can tell, with the astrology. So let's just get into the chart so we can see exactly what I'm talking about. So here we have our moon in Sagittarius. Now, earlier today, our moon in Sagittarius in a fire sign. So like I said, Sagittarius is about alchemy. It's about understanding. It is the big picture. It is truth. And understanding in itself is alchemy, because we're taking ideas that we are gathering and analyzing and putting through our own, biological computer system. But understanding comes from an experience of being part of the concepts that we're considering. They're just ideas, they're concepts. We can conceptualize anything, but understanding comes about as a result of the experience within that, and that's and the opposition to that as well. That is the real alchemy. There is being able to transmute energy by synthesizing polarized concepts or polarized ideals. And this is the basis of creation in 3D life. This is something that I have continually talked about in every single platform that I can, because this is really the theme as we are moving forward. And when the nodes of the moons shift into Gemini and Sagittarius, which will be next month, this will be so much on the forefront. So right now, with the moon in Sagittarius, over the weekend, we're going to get an internalized, personalized experience and view of that dynamic, especially with the moon in Sagittarius, because there is a lot of optimism and abundance and hope. And there's mastery involved with Sagittarius. There is alchemy and transmutation, but the dark side of all of these archetypes exist on a spectrum of experience, and the dark side of everything is there to balance and counterbalance the light. That is just how it works. And so the dark side of Sagittarius is dogma, self-righteousness. You know, these come about as a result of being so fixated on your belief system based on your own understanding that you then start to almost alienate, and then, you know, moving into Capricorn, create structures based out of that dogma and belief. And this is how we get governments and institutions and even cultures that seem to be so rigid in their construction that they seem like they can't be changed. And that is the great illusion of materialism and Capricorn. And that's why Capricorn is related to the devil in the tarot, because there is no escaping the dynamic of material reality when you're in material reality. But the illusion is that that is the end of the cycle, and it does appear to be rigid. And what creates these rigid structures is a very strong belief system that comes out of our idea that we think we know, we believe we know the truth of a situation, but that only comes from what ideas are you allowing in, how are you analyzing them. And so this is all part of the individuation process in the astrological calendar and the wheel of the zodiac. But now collectively we get to understand this. Anyway, so we do have our moon in Sagittarius, and there has been a lift. You know, there is some sense of optimism and hope, and an idea of connecting to what we truly believe. Earlier today, the moon did trine Chiron in 6 to 7 degrees Aries, and then also at the same time was, you can see right here, opposite of Venus in Gemini. And so and this was at between 6 and 7 degrees of Sagittarius. So the Sabian symbol between 6 and 7 degrees of Sagittarius. Let's look at it. A Cupid knocks at the door of a human heart. It's when we talk about Cupid and that kind of idealized love, it's or romantic love, it's glorifying in some ways what the opposite. It glorifies what we assume will fill this void or this need. This is where the ideal love comes from, a subjective event which tends to bring to the lover a crisis or an emotional chaos. And the opportunity is emotional rebirth. Now that is very interesting. With Venus here at this degree, it's still representing the bucket and the rope and the well, the water well that we can drop the bucket into in order to find that middle path downward into our emotional life, into the center, and trusting. You know, there's a lot of trust involved with this degree in terms of the natural world being able to provide for us. And when we say provide for us, we mean water, and water is life, and water represents our emotional life, our feelings, our intuition, in an archetypal sense, especially in things like astrology and tarot. That's what it refers to. And so there, you know, can really feel this strong pull with the moon towards this optimization and towards this idea, because when in Sagittarius, it's about the group at this point. It's not about our own relationship to ourselves necessarily. It's more about the group, because when we move from Sagittarius to Capricorn, what we're doing is creating structures for the collective. And so at this point in Sagittarius, this is the 9th house. This is about understanding. This is higher education. This is foreign travel. This is a much larger perspective in order to transmute and practice alchemy, because we are taking in a variety of different ideas and concepts, analyzing them, and then using our magic to transmute the energy that is created from the the fusion of them. And then if you understand, some basic nuclear physics, that fusion is how a star is able to create energy or light or heat, all of these things. Heat is a byproduct of energy and light. So we so fusion is releasing of energy, and so when we release this energy, we're able to use that. So, but in the earlier stages of Sagittarius, it's still kind of getting used to taking the information we've learned from the Scorpio realm and start to use it. And so there is this like heart opening, this like energy, this like fire in some ways, and it is Cupid knocking at the door, and it is trying to fill a void. And so in some ways, with it trying to Chiron here, which is the wounded healer, the deep wound about our self-worth, and in this degree it has a lot to do with bridging the polarity. It's about living simultaneously in two different realms, and I know many of us are going to resonate with this, and they have been for a long time, about what that means. And Chiron there is showing us that there's such a deep wound around doing that, because we feel like we have to give up an aspect of who we are on one side or the other if we're living simultaneously in these two realms, where we have one foot in one dimension, one foot in the other. And there's a deep wounding about that, because it feels like we have to give up part of ourselves in order to do that. And this is absolutely where we need to transcend. And so with the moon trine to there today, we could possibly, this could go either way. It could support us staying locked into this like wounded healer, victim savior mentality about that kind of thing, and feeling like that we need to find our true love, whatever that means to us, in a way to fill this void, and we are glorifying it in our minds, or we are using that stirring in order to support this this healing of this wound, that we're not a victim, or we don't need a savior, or that we don't have to give up one aspect of our ego to another in order to be potent in this world, to have potential to create in this world. It's possible that we can, and that's, that comes up in the Aries dynamic and archetype over and over and over. Every single degree, there is some aspect of like learning to embody the duality within us, because Aries is just the potent seed. It hasn't even been planted yet. And so within that is duality itself, because in any seed you have genetic information from parents, whatever that means. I mean, you can even talk about a plant that fertilizes itself. That's definitely a possibility. The point is that the duality is inherent in the seed, and we are being led very clearly, in my estimation, to a reality where we have to learn about this dynamic in order to transcend it, and learn about it very, inside and out. We have to master this Gemini energy in order to move past it. And you'll see in the reading that came up pretty directly. So, and then again, because there's an opposition, Venus, Venus is the divine feminine, and she, saying, listen, if you trust in the earth to provide, you trust in nature to provide, if you're willing to put some effort into putting that bucket down into the well, what you pull out will be very valuable to you. But that's in opposition to where we might internally be feeling like this need to fill this void with this idealistic thing, this love, whatever Cupid's arrow is igniting in us when we are pierced by it. Excuse me. So, and we also have the moon sextile Mars today as well. It's just charging right through Aquarius. I mean, it's there's no slowing down. And we are moving into this Aquarian age. And so Mars is just charging forward, and it's just like, yep, this is what's happening. I am moving on to Aquarius. I am leading the charge through the Aquarian age. And so the moon sextile the moon sextile Mars in Aquarius, the Sabian symbol, that's 9 degrees Sagittarius. A mother leads her small child step by step on a steep stairway, and it's the need in any social situation to assist the less evolved in their management of the problems which society requires its members to solve. So that is fascinating because the society that we're moving into, whether you like it or agree with it or not, is the Aquarian age. And this sextile here is a 60-degree angle. It corresponds to the number 6 numerologically, and you'll see in the reading too, so many little spoilers that the 6 is a big number for this weekend in the reading too, because it's about potential. It's harmonized, but it requires activation with a sextile. It's not completely balanced, but if you put some energy into it, it will yield a result that is balanced and harmonious. And so, where's Mars at 9 degrees of Aquarius? There's a lot of imagery too, I've noticed this weekend with flags and eagles in the Sabian symbol. So, this is one of them. It says a flag. This is Mars, by the way. A flag is seen turning into an eagle. And it's basically the idea that the seer, right, the flag, the visual representation of an institution, a country, you know, we can think about it in terms of the United States, since that's where many people who are watching this are probably going to be living. The flag is the symbol, and then the eagle is an animal. It's a being that acts, and the eagle is also connected to the United States as well. The seer must be the doer, right? And part of this doing, we as light workers and starseeds, for instance, healers, intuitives, wanderers, you know, anybody that's here because they are awakened on some level, it's time now that we are going to start doing, as opposed to just being able to psychically see. And Mars is really supporting that. And the thing that we have to remember, though, with the moon at this degree in Sagittarius, is that we are in some ways kind of guiding people that may not be quite awake yet to the bigger picture of what this situation is, what this opportunity is in this situation. And so, and it's not to minimize anybody else's intelligence or their ability to make decisions for themselves or anything like that. It's just that we do have to take some time and realize that, you know, it's not paternal, it's more maternal, it's nurturing, you know, it's that North Node in Cancer energy. It's nurturing, it is supportive, it is understanding, you know, again, understanding going along with the Sagittarius energy. And so we do have to start stepping up, and Mars is really supporting us in that, because Mars is the ruler of Aries, and there's a lot of Aries energy right now. Mercury is in Aries. Look at this, Black Moon Lilith. I mean, she's retrograde, but she's in Aries. That means she's going to come back through Aries when she goes direct. We have Chiron in Aries. We have the Sun in Aries. And we have the dwarf planet Eris, the goddess of discord and chaos, sitting at 24 degrees Aries. And because it's so far out in our solar system, just much, much further than even Pluto, the transiting through each degree is so slow. I mean, Eris has been in Aries probably for our entire lifetimes at this point. So, but this is significant when we come to tomorrow, because the sun is going to conjunct Eris in Aries. And Eris was the god, she was the goddess that didn't get invited to the party, because nobody wants to hang out with Eris, because nobody wants to deal with chaos. So she decided to throw in the golden apple that said, to the fairest, or to the loveliest, or what, some language. And all the peoples, mostly the women, mostly the goddesses, but I'm sure they weren't the only ones, all started fighting over who it was for. And like, so she came to the party whether they wanted her to or not, because you cannot escape entropy in this universe. So that conjunction with the sun tomorrow on Easter, oh boy, wow, we'll get there though. We're still talking about today. So we do need to start stepping up. We have to be the doer as opposed to just seeing the timelines. We have to start standing in our power, and we have to realize emotionally that not everybody is ready to take this step. And so we have to extend our hand in a very nurturing way and be willing to help, you know, the unawakened step by step up, you know, up the staircase, like a little toddler that's just now learning to walk and is now trying to navigate climbing stairs. So that's a very supportive aspect of the moon and Mars today. Now Mercury, like I said, in Aries now. First degree Aries, all about the potential that at any moment could sink back into the ocean, right? It is the woman rising out of the sea. And at any time, she, the potential for failure and success is equal at this point. And it's all about the subjective experience, the sacred feminine rising out of the ocean, being embraced by a seal, which is a mammal in the ocean that lives on land and in water. And at any time, this seal could just drag this woman, pull her back down in. So, the messages, the mind, the concepts, the ideas that Mercury represents, these are all, now we're coming into a place where all of that time in Pisces is now bringing these ideas and these concepts. They're so fresh, they're so new, they're so potent, and they're so easily dissolved back into the grand ocean of experience and consciousness. It's very tenuous right now. But sextile, it will eventually sextile to Saturn in Aquarius, and also at the same time is square the nodes. So square the north node, square the south node. So what does this have to do with anything? Well, Mercury, I just explained what that was all about. And then the second degree, because it'll happen at the second degree. So Mercury at this time of this chart is at 0 degrees, 54 minutes. But as soon as it moves into the next degree, that's when it'll sextile. Again, that's 60 degree, that's 6 in numerology. And then we'll also square the nodes, which is that 90-degree angle of being broadsided, different trajectories entirely. So this is the woman rising out of the ocean. So what's 2 degrees? A comedian reveals the human nature. Now, if you remember from the daily medicine reading yesterday, the Roadrunner came up, and Sagittarius is also very connected to humor and comedy. And there is in this, with the first degree of Aries, it's all subjective potential, and you get the immediate with the next degree. And this happens in all the signs. The second degree is the immediate counterposition to that, which is objectivity. And that's what a comedian really does. That is their role in society, is to reveal human nature and give you the capacity to look at society objectively through the lens of humor, because it kind of disarms the seriousness of it. But at the same time, you are able to look at yourself and the potential from an objective standpoint using humor. And so Mercury is going to sextile this Saturn in Aquarius that is sitting at this degree about an unexpected thunderstorm. I mean, the storm has been upon us and is going to continue to be upon us until Saturn probably moves out of this degree, but also squaring the nodes. The north node, 2 degrees at Cancer, the flying carpet, right? The south node of Capricorn, our karmic history, where we're headed away from. This degree is symbolized by these stained glass windows in a Gothic church, and one of them is broken. And it's the idea that an inflexibility and a grab for power could easily lead to a war and to an aggressive means of holding that power. And there are consequences for that. And in some ways, it's a waste of the human potential by gathering this very material power through Capricorn. And so Mercury is squaring both of these positions, and it's because we are being asked in the mind to objectively look at human nature, while these are showing us like we're either going to just sail above it all, or we're going to see very the downside of having this aggressive, confrontational, collective power, which is, the war. And that's what the broken stained glass window in the church represents, that there are consequences and there's a wastefulness. But we're not even being asked to look at that with Mercury. Mercury is just like, use your sense of humor, use your inner comedian to just look objectively at every aspect around you. It has nothing to do with either of these positions, and that's where the square comes in. But this is really going to be supported supporting this Saturn in, I mean, it's been rough. And I mean, obviously, but the unexpected thunderstorm of 2 degrees Aquarius is just dragged out because Saturn moves so slow and because it's so dense and real. And so being able to use humor, being able to activate that inner comedian in our minds is really going to support our ability to ride along with this and get through the storm. Absolutely. So, and then by the end of today, the moon is going to square, the moon in Sagittarius is going to square Neptune in Pisces. And when we move into the last decan of a sign, especially Sagittarius, we're looking at strength. We're looking at the 9 of Wands and the moon in Sagittarius. That is this third decan of Sagittarius in the tarot, is the moon in Sagittarius, and it represents strength. And so there's going to be, you know, this still here is still showing us, this Neptune in Pisces is still showing us where that the table is still set for us. Everything has been set. You know, we just have to show up. And this is going to shift, I will say, right after the new moon, which is on the 22nd of April. The new moon is going to be at 3 to 4 degrees Taurus. And right after that is when Neptune is going to shift, like the next day, Neptune is going to shift into the next degree. And I feel like that's going to be this moment, you know, where things will really shift in our direct, not so much in our direction, but there will be some sort of release, because the Taurus is obviously very solidified. It's fixed earth. It really has to do with like the real nuts and bolts of our reality around us. And having a new moon there is going to be really helping us get it's so solidifying and giving us an opportunity to set intention around developing the life and the world we want to live in. And when we move past this degree, I think we will have shown up at the new moon, we will have shown up at the table ready to eat with our family, ready to eat with our community, whoever our sangha, our spiritual community is, around this time with the new moon. So, but in the meantime, the square here with the moon is there's going to be this like push. I think the 20 degree Sagittarius is an old-fashioned northern village. Men cut the ice of a frozen pond for use during the summer. There is going to be some sort of underlying this underlying drive in some ways to start procuring the things that we need for the summertime, the foresighted use of natural resources, whatever those natural resources are. And it's in square to, because Neptune is saying you have everything, it's all here. You just have to show up. You don't have to really do anything. So the moon, as it gets into this last degree today, we're going to really feel like that we need to start gathering some sort of resources, planning ahead in order to be ready for the summer. And it's not to say that that's not something we should be doing, but the square here is going to bring out the very obvious T-bone here between those kinds, between those types of energies of like doing something. You know, Sagittarius is a fire sign as opposed to just being, which is Pisces and Neptune in Pisces. So again, this dynamic between the masculine, which is activity and action and will, and Pisces, which is the divine feminine. It's just being, it's receiving, it just is. So we will feel that because there's going to be we're going to start feeling this need to do something about things. So as we move to tomorrow, so let's move to Easter Day. Is this going to be Easter? It sure is. All right, so our moon is at 11:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. So tomorrow we have the moon at the galactic center. So that's going to be significant in and of itself because that is a sculptor at work. This is starting to take the creative ideas that we've developed through our understanding and start to actually put them into material form. We're going to really feel like we want to do that. We're going to feel driven and personally driven and intuitively moved to start doing that. And the moon then will move into Capricorn and then conjunct with the South Node at that same degree about that same degree that's talking about the Gothic church stained glass windows with the one broken out. And so we're really emotionally going to face that reality, and it's going to be opposed the north node, which is the magic carpet above everything else, like looking at the whole big picture on our magic carpet. So we're going to see it right in our faces with the moon. It's going to show us the potential waste of energy of humanity to go to war, and it's going to be opposing this aspect of sailing above the whole thing in order to gain that perspective. And that's going to be really, really obvious to us tomorrow. The sun is also going to, before it reaches this point, is going to trine the sun in Aries, which is conjunct with Eris, the goddess of discord. What is the Sabian symbol? Blown inward by the wind, the curtains open to take the shape of a cornucopia, abundance made possible by human togetherness and cooperation. So where is the sun trine? So where's 24 degrees Sagittarius? A bluebird perched on the gate of a cottage, the reward which meets every effort at integration into a social environment for those who remain true to their own selves. This is going to be, whoo boy, this is going to be a challenge to us. Absolutely. Now the moon is absolutely really supporting the sun because they are in a trine, and the sun is going to be conjunct Eris at the same degree. The cornucopia, the wind blows open to show the cornucopia. And if we are engaged with our internal strength, the moon in Sagittarius, the 9 of Wands, there are rewards for those who stay in their integrity and stay true to themselves, because the apple's going to get rolled in to the party, and it's going to disrupt so much tomorrow. I do not take this conjunction lightly, considering everything that's happening. Now, on top of that, we also have at one point Mercury and Black Moon Lilith. Now they've crossed positions, but they will be conjunct as well. And Black Moon Lilith is if the moon is at apogee or perigee, which it just was at this most recent full moon, which means it's closest to the Earth in its orbit. The apogee is the furthest point that the moon has in its orbit around the Earth. And that's where Black Moon Lilith is. So it's deeper than even our intuition, instinctual need for self-preservation, survival. That's Black Moon Lilith. And also another sacred feminine aspect. You know, it's the dark feminine. It is that survival mentality that we all hold that's even deeper than our own intuition, that we have to make friends with and, like, at the very least understand their MO within us. So these two are going to conjunct as well, and it's going to be at that 3 degree of Aries, which is very interesting. The cameo profile of a man suggesting the shape of his country. It's the individual identifying him or herself with the collective whole. That's the 3. So remember, 3s are the catalyzing number, and you have 1 and 2, the polarities, one, you know, yin and yang, masculine, feminine, whatever, however you identify it, those 2 aspects. And then the 3 is the apex, the first apex, which is the connection of the 2. And this is the individual identifying themselves with the other in their own form, like their profile of their face. And so Mercury and Lilith are going to come together, and there is going to be this connection between what we're thinking and the ideas we have, and this really, really deep instinctual self-preservation need to be able to identify ourselves with the whole. Now, it depends on which whole you are identifying yourself with, and that is also going to come up very strongly as we move forward with Gemini energy and the aspect of polarity, because it's the instinct is to pick a side still. And that's something we have to remember with Black Moon Lilith. It's instinct, it's survival instinct. And if all we know as a program, as a human psyche, is to pick a side in order to be preserved, then that's what we're going to do. And we could definitely find ourselves still in a place where we're picking a side. But I'm telling you that this conjunction of the sun with Eris at this point, and then in trine to the moon in Sagittarius, almost exactly those two things, there is going to be a disruption, the chaos, total chaos. And it's going to be needed because that's what Eris does. And keep in mind that this is blowing the window open to see the cornucopia. We just have to choose to see it for what it is, though, and not get caught up in the discord, because that is a very real possibility. Now, Eris has been sitting at 24 degrees Aries for a long time, probably as long as I've started like doing these broadcasts and creating this content, and probably much longer than that. So this is not new for her. She's been showing us this for a long time. It's that the sun, which is the aspect of our own consciousness that we are aware of, you know, the center of our solar system, is going to illuminate that very, very strongly. And then, so we talked about the moon opposing the south node, or the north node conjuncting the south node. We're going to have it's going to get very serious emotionally. A Capricorn moon is going to be very, very serious, and we're going to want to get down to brass tacks. And for an Easter, it's going to be very interesting. There is this resurrection kind of like energy that is obviously associated with Easter, and I think that it's going to be very chaotic. I wish it wasn't, but the reading is going to provide so much potential, like creative potential, and some signposts, you know, of how to manage this for ourselves. And then the moon will come along in Capricorn, and then it's going to also square Mercury. A strong desire to want to prove oneself. That's where the moon will be, that degree, squaring Mercury in Aries, which is the cameo profile of a person who has identified themselves with their collective, that they're embodying it in their actual physical, you know, their personality, their physical essence, like their body, all these things, who they are as a person will be reflected, or the collective will be reflected in who you are as a person. And this is the message we're getting from Mercury. And so when the moon comes around and squares it at a degree that's basically a powerful yearning to and desire to prove yourself, it's definitely going to really encourage people to, I think, to act very strongly and to take themselves very seriously, because that is a moon in Capricorn. Take yourselves very seriously, very industrious. Not a lot of room for curiosity, not a lot of room for transmutation. It is very much down to the nuts and bolts of things. And it's going to be a challenge. I do feel like that Sunday could potentially give us a lot to consider as well. And then we move, but really what I think it's doing is setting us up for Tuesday, which I guess I'd said at the beginning is the third quarter square, which is the transition from the third to the fourth quarter of the lunar cycle. And that's when the moon begins to get darker and darker and darker. And things will be less reflected out in the open as they are with the full moon in terms of our internal processes. So it's going to be an interesting rest of the weekend, and I think it's going to be really challenging. And let's go to the reading for now, so I can show you what hope there is and what to like focus on potentially in order to really get through what's going on. Because if you're just like allowing yourself to be thrown about by the energy right now, it's going to continue to be a struggle for people. It's the weekend, so I get 2 cups of coffee. I'm excited about that. I like to treat myself, so I'm really excited about this reading. Okay, so I use the Akashic Tarot. I use Stephen D. Farmer's messages from your animal messages from your spirit guides. And then I pulled some cards from the Thoth Tarot as well as kind of a central theme. So really interesting reading. So we'll look at the first tier, the top tier, and then the bottom tier, and then the Thoth is in the middle. So I've used this format before, but it also seems to follow in the idea of, like, you know, keeping a cosmic perspective, a perspective that is spiritual and divine in nature, and seeing the bigger picture. And then what's underneath seems to be where we're rooted subconsciously, our fear programming, our just human programming in general that we've been working with. And then the middle is like the central theme and seems to be giving us a really clear direction on how to engage with what is the bigger picture and let go of what is really just a result of our fear programming. Okay, so, and the sixes are big, big, big. I'll point them out as I go along. Sixes are, you know, like I said, the sextile is a harmonious balance in astrology, but it requires some action on the part of the individual to, you know, to activate where that is. It requires some sort of movement in some ways. It's not as balanced as the trine, which doesn't take any outside influence to be supportive and balanced, just like the base of a pyramid. Okay, so here's our first six, the divine physician. We've already talked about this in the daily medicine. Notice that he is doing the Reiki healing to her heart. There's a well in the background. He is literally holding the bucket. We're talking about spiritual healing with this card. And these people here, they're either bearing witness or they are waiting to go next. I'm not really sure, you know, that's up to interpretation. But what I will say is, number one, like I said, the first six, energy healing, spiritual healing. He's got the bucket that goes to the well. What's the well? It holds the water in the earth for us. And this is where Venus is in Gemini, the well under the tree. Trusting and having faith in nature to provide what we need. And what we need is spirit. What we need is our feelings. This is how we are going to really get through this, is by healing ourselves spiritually. And that's also what it's at the top of this reading, is this divine physician. What we're experiencing is a divine healing. As troublesome and troubling and potentially devastating this experience has been so far and will continue to be, this is part of this divine healing, and healing our hearts and having support to pull the water of life out of the earth, because this is who is really supporting us, is the earth. So on top of that, not on top of it literally, but with it, the One of Keys, the architect. Oh, I love this. If you really look at the card, I mean, it's very Egyptian, and they're looking at plans. He's pointing off to, you know, something that's going on, and things are being built, but it's still at the very beginning stage. When we're talking about the architect is the person who draws up the plans. It's not the person who's building. This is just drawing up the plans. So again, we're in this stage right now, this very beginning stage, in a very physical, material way of building something new. And it takes a long time. Look how much is going on here that they're building. And the fact that they have this Egyptian kind of attire and this Egyptian theme going on suggests that what they're building is really, really big and very important to their community and to the spiritual nature of their community as well. As we probably, you know, with the pyramids and stuff, whatever you believe about them, they were very important to this civilization. But we're still at the beginning stages. We are, the One of Keys is, we haven't started really building. Some people have started building, but really they're just looking at plans. They're making sure that everything that they've planned for and the blueprints are accurate, and there'll be changes. That's the other thing too, that what you see on the blueprint, just like an astrological birth chart, what you see on the blueprint isn't what actually is manifested in material life. It doesn't look like it looks on the page, because that's a two-dimensional thing. We're talking about something that's in 3D in this case, when we're talking about material building. So we're just the plans. It's just the plans right now that are being drawn, they've been drawn out. They are looking at it and they are assessing, and they're at the very beginning stages of building something completely new. And that's something else to consider. We're not going to get this massive overhaul in one weekend. You know, we're not even going to get it in one season, but we are starting this process, and this is going to become very clear over the weekend and into Monday and Tuesday. I do believe that this will make a lot more sense, but understand that we are in this mode of spiritual healing, divine healing through this process. Now, the animal that came out, the octopus, practice shape-shifting by altering your physical appearance and mannerisms. So the octopus, if you know anything about octopi, they change the color of their skin based on how they are responding to their environment. So if they're relaxed, they are one color. If they're scared, they're another color. If they're angry or about to attack or whatever they do, they shift. And it's not so much about this shape-shifting is going to come in view and make more sense as we move through the reading, because the aspect of polarity and how much our ego is attached to duality and picking a side is going to make this make a lot more sense. Because if we're able to literally shapeshift and put ourselves in a position or an experience of somebody that's not us, especially somebody that is almost the opposite of us, this is allowing some real powerful magic with this shape shifting. Absolutely. Within ourselves, because this is how we transmute something that we don't understand or that we are struggling with, is by living the experience of something that's opposing to us. And I think that we are all have so many opportunities to do this all the time, but we're coming up to a point now where I believe what is, especially with the astrology, is that we are going to be almost forced into this. So if we are willing to start mastering this now, it will feel a lot easier to do so and to teach other people as well as we move forward, because this is the only way that you transcend polarization, is being able to live simultaneously in two realms at once, which is what Chiron is teaching us right now. We have to let go of that victim savior mentality, but in order to do that, we have to actually be both and to understand what it feels like to be both. So I think this is a really important thing for people to consider in a very real way, because the thing about Sagittarius, again, is the self-righteousness and this dogma, and people believe that they are right about something when they haven't taken the opportunity to experience in a very emotional or taking any trying any exercise basically to put themselves in the position of being somebody. And so a really easy exercise that I've been doing, it's not easy, it's simple, but it's very difficult to put yourself in these positions. But I really recommend it, is putting yourself into an emotional position where you are a guard at Auschwitz or something to that extent. You know what I mean? Put yourself in that position and understand a person, a human being that embodies that role, because we all have that potential. To think that we don't have the potential for evil is incredibly naive, and is exactly what is going to potentially allow the construct of evil to be present even more. And so this is what I practice this. I continue to practice this. I'm not afraid to look at my shadow, because this is where real power within comes from. So the shape-shifting is showing us, this card is really leading us to, if you're able to do this, your ability to transcend the duality that is holding us all back in some ways is going to, you're going to be able to teach other people as well. All right, so underneath everything, it's so good. Okay, so I'm going to show you these two cards. Here's a 6, the 6 of roses, the War of the Roses. This is a 4. It's a little bit more balanced. Views of the ego. Bam, they're both reversed. Okay, and this is what's underneath. Now, what this is suggesting to me, and what I've been feeling very powerfully, is that there is no real war other than within us. And the ego exists within that construct of duality. There is no need for an, you see how he's looking at himself in the mirror, all right? Ego exists for survival. And so far, our ability, how we conceptualize survival, our ability to survive, has been based on, you know, aligning with one aspect of duality over the other. But this is all going, this is, if this is at the root of you and all of us, this is where we need to work on, is that there, again, this is a 6. Are we gonna believe that there is a war here, that we need to square off with our brothers and sisters and our, you know, other members of humanity? Or are we going to realize that it's all a show? And but the only way to really do that is that you have to do the shape shifting. You have to put yourself in the position of the opposing force in order to understand their humanity. So here's one. Again, the view of the ego. It's not that there's no way of getting rid of an ego. It's the construct of the psyche that is necessary in order to survive in a dualistic nature. And that's not going anywhere. We still live on Earth, right? Even if we're transcending to 5th density, which is transcending duality, we still have to get there. And we still have to bring everybody else with us. And we still are living on Earth. And so the other aspect of this is that connecting to the ego, using the ego as your primary source of information and the filter in which you take in information, is also false. And it's not to say that it doesn't have its purpose and that we shouldn't acknowledge our ego. It's a falsehood to think that the spiritual path gets rid of your ego. It's not, you don't get rid of that part of your psyche. It's what keeps you surviving. But the illusion is thinking that that's all there is. And that's also where we need to realize the fear programming is activating this ego. Now, the animal is the shark. Trust your instincts to discern the truth of a situation. Oh my God. Are you gonna trust your instincts? Are you gonna discern the truth? Or are you gonna keep letting this fear programming that there is an enemy? Well, what enemy do you think there is? And focusing on just your ego for survival. This is really important. This is the work every single person has to do. Every single person. This is how we get through this and move on to our awakened planet. But it's going to take some time, and it's going to take actual effort. That's Mars and Aquarius right now. You know what I mean? Like it's time to move towards the Aquarian age. It's time to see the bigger picture of where we are going. A flag is seen turning into an eagle. You know, the seer becomes the doer. You know, there's no sitting back on our, you know, in this observational realm anymore. Not to say that we need to go out and do anything, but it's more about we need to start setting the example, and it's time to do so. All right, and so here's number 6, the Lovers, the Gemini card, and then along with it, which I thought was really interesting, is, well, let's do it upright. This is also a 6. It is the 6 of Swords, science. Mercury in the 2nd decan of Aquarius. Now, we haven't gotten to the 2nd decan. We're getting pretty close with Mars. Not quite there yet. You can see how this is about balance, mental balance. It's about using the construct of science and the scientific method to come to a very clear conclusion that is not you see how everything outside of it is really discordant, and these pattern, there's not like really much of a pattern, it's just kind of this like craziness around it. But then you have these swords, you have this perfect circle here, and then you have like a cross, you have a Christian cross in the middle. We don't really, this needs to be instituted internally. This is what I'm getting from this reversal. And it's not quite there yet. We're not quite there yet, but we have to start, like I said, we have to start developing this internally, this scientific, rational perspective of balance of our minds amidst all of this chaos and amidst all of this like distraction and static and all this other shit that's trying to throw us off our balance. So, but I just really love, I love the lovers, the 6. It's the Gemini card. It is the opposition coming together, sanctioned by this huge figure. You could think of it as the Hierophant. You know, the number 5 card is the sanctioned representation of God. And he comes into this card, or she comes into this card, they come into this card. And look, there's Cupid with the arrow right there. We just talked about that with Sagittarius today. It's really about merging the polarities, being able to see that opposition is really one and the same. That is the real power of Gemini, and being able to cross that boundary instead of being only situated on one side or the other because they appear to be opposites. This is the principle of the yin and the yang, the masculine and feminine. It is through time, it is through cultures, it is something that is actually embedded in us down to the genetic level, that once we realize how powerful that really is, nobody can stop this planet from ascending. Oh, okay, that's enough for the weekend report. I'm going to finish my second cup of coffee in, I don't know, I don't want to say silence, but maybe actually it'll be nice to let my brain just like, and as I'm sure you will as well. But I hope you found this video helpful, gave you some things to think about and to work with. I certainly enjoyed providing it. As always, everything you need is in the description box below, in terms, especially getting to Facebook, Instagram, and the Daily Catalyst blog. You can book sessions through Facebook. I will be opening sessions, astrological readings and intuitive readings. I'm not sure I'm ready to do energy work quite yet. We'll see how that goes, but definitely astro readings. I will have that stuff available on Facebook soon to just book directly through there for a one-on-one session through Zoom. And I will see you, I would say, on Tuesday, so we can, I'm going to do a report for the 4th quarter leading up to the new moon, and hopefully there'll be some more information to share. But I hope that this weekend report is finding you well. Happy Easter if you are celebrating that, Austera, whatever you choose to celebrate, this continual cycle of death and rebirth, which is what we're all going through right now. I hope that it finds you well. And if you need anything, don't hesitate to reach out. Like I said, description box below has all of the contact information. Take care of yourselves. I will see you on the next video.